Dorchester, November 1982. Rather than being a lecture or a talk, the conversation that follows on this cassette, taken from a much longer get-together between Dave Potter, Paul Taylor and I one evening to discuss the format of meetings on a regional basis, and also the very important question of the attitude of everyone towards the basic training and the basic philosophy that relates to the simplicities of exercise, movement, posture. During the evening there were many interruptions of telephone calls, which is the usual thing. But from all the conversation that took place, we have assembled this collage. And so I invite you to listen to it in that spirit and partake of the conversation that we had sitting together on the floor drinking tea in Manor Road in Dorchester.
The fact that there are people who, in large quantities in this group, who don't like joining things, for whatever positive or negative reason they have for not joining things, and also the fact that they dislike the group intensely when it comes together as a group, is quite irrelevant to fellowship. Quite irrelevant to fellowship. And remember telling a story of the great eternal forest and the fire rushing through the forest, and the most unlikely partnerships and dependencies develop, and that is necessary. Strange bedfellows develop in crisis. The fellowship that comes from many people practicing a way which is personal to them, no matter how they interpret it in their projections, is nevertheless that particular way that is being practiced in the same way as you lead 100 people over a short distance of ground with a rock and a hole and a stile and a tree, and each one will relate to the rock and the hole and the stile and the tree in totally different ways, and it will then become personal to them, and they will all treat it differently. It's the same way. But the person who can negotiate the tree and can't negotiate the hole can link up with someone who can negotiate the hole and is not very good at the tree, then you have fellowship. And that's all that's needed. After that, everybody minds their own business and gets on with working out their own salvation, because that's the only person they can ever help. Which is all I'm trying to teach. Yesterday, during the last three, I think it's the last three newsletters, I've been making certain statements about the group, about Sati Society, about its origins, going back quite a long time, and easing it towards what I see for the future. How long I've seen that future is again irrelevant. When the time comes to point it out, the time comes to point it out. there's always a mixture of reactions, which again change all the time. The people who are coming to work with me now are of a totally different kind, totally different needs, with different life experiences under their belt than came, for instance, 8, 9 years ago. Totally different. To each of the people who come in, they are taught basics. And each person who is taught basics, either because of their own human tendencies, or because they are also meeting people who have passed through basics previously and have that attitude, gradually find themselves corrupted through sensualities which make life a little easier and less confronting than the basics, to follow some other ways. And so you get people tempted by things like Qigong, Tai Chi, some martial forms, massage, every other kind of sensuality that has always been present in the world, which divert people away from basics. And yet in a strange way, without the basics or some acceptance of the basics, they wouldn't be able to go into those other things in the same way. But nevertheless, the confrontation of the basics of the way, which includes the philosophy of the basics, is so confronting that, as human nature has always done, when they are faced with the ancient wisdom, they will try to divert it or to dilute it. And so the principal mode of teaching for the immediate future is very much towards pointing people to basics and emphasizing and bringing home as clearly as possible that basics are not merely elementaries. Basics are the most profound thing that one can practice. But it's not saying that one just does and then tries to go on to the more interesting and more advanced things, because the basics are the most advanced things. And if one spent all the time on the basics, then the understanding of the basics at an increasingly profound level would produce the simplicity and the profoundness which would translate itself into everyday life. Which is why from time to time I have a purge about the basics. The paradox here is the group. And as I said many times before, this group defines itself by what it does. It will always define itself by what it does. Defines itself by its attitude to the teaching, defines itself by the attitude to the environment, defines itself by its attitude to the teacher. This is human nature. This will always define itself in that way. And the more the teacher confronts, the more the student gets their back against the wall, and the more the moralities and the loyalties put themselves in their right priorities, and the avoidances and the insulations and the betrayals go on at that point. It has always been so. I don't expect anything different. It has always been so. Any teacher who expects anything different is a fool. But gradually people get the message. Gradually. it would be doing some people a disservice to not to allow the slack on the teaching rope, like training a small pup. You put it on a long leash first. If you keep it close to the heel and keep jerking his head off, he'll never learn anything. It'll either play truant, or it'll bide its time, or it'll have its spirit broken. And it's the same with personal practice. You must permit old conditionings to run a little bit and then gently ease them back so it begins to understand. And in exactly the same way with students who have come to be confronted with the facts of life. But nevertheless, when they are confronted with the facts of life, they become afraid, and old conditionings rise in order to corrupt the ever-present possibility of becoming completely free from their conditionings. It can't happen in a snap of the fingers. Otherwise it'd be so easy it wouldn't be worth getting. And one also understands that as people are doing things which are developments of or slight diversions from the basic practice, that they are also having to put into operation some of the basics and many of the basics. And so their diversion will gradually lead them back into the into the basic practice, which is always being taught. Sometimes there's a push or a special emphasis because one or two ropes have become a little slack, and are trying to go a little bit beyond that leeway that they're being given. Others need to be brought up occasionally with a little sharp shock. I had someone on the phone this evening presenting me with exactly the same problems they presented me with 4 years ago, and 3 years ago, and 18 months ago. And the answer was the same each time. And each time they tried to find another way around the basic fact that they have to let go of certain things that they're holding on to and start something new and fresh. That is the way of things. And they greeted what I was saying almost with surprise until I reminded them that I told them this 4 years ago, and pointed out that what they have been doing is not an antidote to their problem, but is part of the problem. There are a number of people at present time. It's a small percentage, but a significant percentage, who have been working in a particular way. And some of the talks that I've been giving, and some of the work I've been doing in workshops, which has been related to the myth of practice, not using practice as an insulation against life and things like this, have all presented them with certain things to consider, which have helped them over a period of maybe 6 or 7 months to have certain realizations that this thing that they call their practice and the exercises actually do work in everyday life, and that they can do it in everyday life, and they found a great deal of help and comfort from it, and also been quite sobered in finding what they've been doing previously, which they thought was practice. And each time that has happened, they've been reminded that this is precisely what I told them on their basic workshop. And keep saying through a stack of 40 tapes that I have out there. It's in every one. But one doesn't expect this total sublime truth to be accepted because there's a lot of conditioning against it. One is patient, one keeps saying it. And gradually people get the message. Sometimes to their surprise, even after 7 years. Suddenly they get it. So fair enough, somebody's got it, who's counting? If I had any expectations or needs for acceptance or success, I would be totally lost and valueless as a teacher. As long as I keep saying the right things and maintain my freshness and enthusiasm and joy, which is not difficult, then I will continue to be as ingenious as possible, present the same things in many, many different ways, so people have as many options as possible and as many gates open as possible to get to it. I just create gaps. The ultimate gap, of course, is the here and now. But I also create a lot of other gaps. Gates, holes, fences with holes in them, doors, for people to come in through and go out from. And we come back then to those who are looking for the way in, there's the way out, and those who are looking for the way out, there's the way in. And that is sufficient. Present any human being with truth, and they will try to find a way to negotiate it, or to dilute it, or to make it more comfortable. Show someone a mirror, which has the quality of reflecting them as they truly are, and of filtering what they project, so that they do see what they truly are. They will take one look at that reflection, and they will then hastily get out their makeup kits and their various bits and pieces and pin things on the mirror in order to change the image to make it more acceptable, while still insisting that they are working wholeheartedly for the truth. It's their own particular level that they have to do it at, and gradually those bits and pieces fall off the mirror, but only when they're ready to accept it. So for a little while we'll be following and pushing the basics. And if there are those who meet together for the practicing of this particular way, then at this present time I have to insist that it's practiced in a particular way to the basics, and to show that the basics are so wide and so profound as to be capable of filling not only 2 or 3 hours a fortnight or a month, but to be capable of filling 24 hours in every day with adventure and excitement. If only people will not try to look for ways away from it and ways to dilute it and installations to avoid the implications of it. But for whatever short period of time people do meet, for whatever motives, then particularly for those who are coming fresh to the practice and are coming in a different way than previous people, then we must present them with every opportunity to keep the things as simple as possible, so that they will feel the effect in their everyday life, and try to make the time of negotiation shorter for them rather than longer. Which is why I'm trying at the present time to set off every group on a particular path, and will want anyone who's organizing it and guiding it to keep to that simplicity, quite uncompromisingly keep to that simplicity, so that people get the message, whether they've been with us a long time or a short time, that it is the simplicity of those basics that will take them through. And if more and more actually begin to believe it, even those who are leading and guiding the various groups, if they don't actually believe it at the present time, maybe if they say it because I insist that they say it, maybe they'll get the message themselves.
At this point there was a short conversation about such things as Qigong, Tai Chi, martial arts, dart throwing, and various other similar kinds of activities. And the response that you are about to hear was really something which summarized the whole subject at a particular point.
And one has to react to everything I said, not merely to parts of what I said. I said if people want to follow that, any particular thing, then to meet on another occasion to do it. Back to the basics. The basics are important. And people have to understand that the things that attracted them in the first place is the thing that made the possibility of doing these other things possible. Not to get confused and carried away. I've heard people say, I did Qigong because I feel good with it in the mornings. So I say, what about some of the basics? So I haven't been doing those recently. But if I feel a bit stiff or something like that, then I do the basics. Just a little adjustment to that attitude will take the basics in more deeply and let them be absorbed. Once they're absorbed, then the basics are living. Then they can go to a new level of basics. Because as each set of crusts of superficial tensions and agencies of past conditionings fall away, a new set is revealed. In the same way as we looked at the anatomical charts of the muscles in the body the other evening. As you go down through different sets of muscles, different layers of tension are revealed. And the privilege of going deeper and deeper and deeper, and of being able to go deeper, right down into the very basics of human nature, is what liberation is all about. Merely because you let go of a group of superficial tensions doesn't mean to say you're liberated, it just means to say you've got a little skill to tackle the next layer. The saint has a greater appreciation and experience of suffering than the novice. And he can cope with it. So that's what he's there for. That's why we call it all work. That's why we call it the work, not the fun.
So when you say basics, how far do you go before basics become accessories or secondary exercises? What do you consider when you say basics?
Posture, breathing, facial expression, gesture, standing, walking, sitting, lying down. Those are basics. The floor work, which lead into the first position, which is the cradle. Developments of cradle into frog and to elephant. Development of those basics in standing up, which lead into the undulation, and to the squat, which is the cradle from an upright position. And any extensions of those basics, such as, for instance, into the bridge or the floor stretch, as suits individual people who have some muscular block which prevents them doing the basic properly.
Right.
Dart throwing may be primitive, and confronting it isn't basics.
I wasn't sure whether you were going to just limit it to the exercises that begin on the floor and end at the frog or the bridge.
But they don't end.
When I say that, I mean that we have taught a lot of other exercises, but aside of that, which include undulations, which include squats, which haven't been called the basics, but they.
There's no reason at all why, for instance, if we take the floor exercises as the standard, which, if taught properly, influence every other movement. And then we see someone going up a flight of stairs in a totally wrong position. Then we can take them back to the floor, show them how they get up from the floor, and take that then into walking up and down stairs as an expression of the basics in their everyday life, and make that connection. But the basics, either lying flat on the floor or standing up, really confirm each other, and if people can make a connection from what they do when they're standing up to what they do when they're lying down on the floor, then you have the standing, walking, sitting, lying down. But the basics have to be projected into something so that they can be absorbed rather than being kept separate, with the idea that because you do the basics, that will have some influence because you feel better on what you do later in the day. They have to be carried through in technique and in spirit in terms of quality.
Do you see self-observation as itself as a basic?
Discovery as a basic, yes. Discovery, making connections. Understanding that physical sensations which arise from material things, the touch of familiar clothes, shoes, heels worn, belts tight in particular places, which push the body into a particular shape. Ideas, emotions, opinions, which produce facial expressions, attitudes, and deeper attention patterns. That all these can be understood and be discovered as having a connection, and that it is possible through letting go an arm or a breath or a chest box or a pelvis to can let go equally well something that has been weighing on their mind for 20 years that they never let go of, in the same way they'll never let go of the muscle. So the whole principle of basic exercise is one simple formula, that you extend a movement on the out-breath and then breathe into that movement that you have extended. If it's a stretch, you stretch on the out-breath, breathe into what you stretched, and then let it go. But if you haven't breathed out and let go through the whole length of that stretch, then you're doing it with tension, not with relaxation. And this is where the basics come into their own. Mm-hmm. By the length of time that one spends in it. Well, one can spend not just 15 seconds on one out-breath, which is maybe 2% of people. A 15-second out-breath, gradually raising an arm up off the floor. But in actual fact, 15 minutes to raise an arm up with X number of out-breaths, which would be 60 out-breaths and in-breaths, gradually raising the arm off the floor until they really understand what the underside of every cell means, and then find that they know that the moment they take their mind off it, that the arm just drops because of the weight that they encourage. Then they find relaxation. Then they know what it's about. Then they begin to find what it is they're letting go of. And it is never the arm. It is the attitude. Because the attitude is the identity, and what they are holding is the identity. The arm is just the root, the symbol of what they're holding on to. You don't hold on to muscles. We hold on to attitudes. Muscles are the pawns in the game. It's increasingly important for me at the moment that because of the numbers of people coming in with a terrific level of commitment and enthusiasm, and are really getting possibly rather, because of that, possibly rather more in terms of understanding and revelation during the basic workshop than people in the past did. And it's even relevant to find the reasons. That they are able to keep up with that level, and that influx of energy can inspire other older energies that are flagging a bit because of the challenge. And if I can be fairly sure that that standard is being aimed at in all the existing groups, it's all quite important. And if I project, as I say, 18 months ahead, and from 18 months ahead for the next 8.5 years after that, which means for the next 10 years, after August next year, and I'm going to the second 10 years. There are more groups and more people going to develop, and the way of working has to change to cope with it.
Yeah.
Which I've always known would happen, and I haven't encouraged it because I wanted to get the base right and also assemble my teachers. But I'm not going out to try to build up an organization, but I do know that there are a hell of a lot waiting, and that I have to make it available, which is why my base may possibly move into Europe and not remain in England. I say it started on the mainland, and it may have to go into its next phase from the mainland. Do you see the
there being a sense of obligation to attend the meetings?
At one level, yes. Well, put it this way, the act of not attending would tend to point to something.
Yeah. Yeah.
The basic fact must be acknowledged that no one is in such a state of clarity, ease, or confidence or competence that they have nothing that they need to work on, and there's nothing they cannot learn. And in simple terms of fellowship, if they haven't sufficient goodwill to overcome their distaste of being part of a group for 6 hours or 3 hours in every month, then there is nothing that this way can possibly do for them if they're not prepared to contribute that. As an act of goodwill, even only at that level. I would tend to say that if anyone feels that there is no reason and no urge and no pull, at least once a month, to have what they regard as their practice or their attitudes checked or mirrored, then they are hiding something which is very deeply in need of help. But the essence, again, is, and this is particularly relevant for those that are meeting every fortnight for an evening. The essence is that people come to it as they would come to a workshop, and that they come in to a place which is a place of work and not merely somebody's house that they know. But they come in and they change, and they come in as they would come into a zendo 5 or 10 minutes before I get there, and I would expect people to be working and not sitting around chatting and smoking and supping tea. It is a place of work and a time for work, and that is the commitment and the energy that they have to come with. So they come in the same sort of spirit and the same clothes that we come for a workshop, and they come straight in. And if they feel that it is relevant as they come in to bow to the zendo, then that would be a very good thing for them to do. My 2 grandchildren, 7 and 9, are learning judo, and they walk out onto the mat, and they bow deeply to the mat, and they bow deeply to the teacher. And they do it naturally, and they never forget. There is nothing that one finds that one is bound to bow to. Then it appears that one has an idea of oneself that is probably a little exaggerated. A little over-optimistic. Even in bowing to the mat and bowing to the teacher, one is not bowing to the mat or to the teacher, one is bowing to the form. Because it isn't the muscles that bend, it's the attitude. We're still not teaching muscles, we're not teaching bowing, we're teaching attitudes. And if something is not so precious and of such priority and so valuable that one is not forced to one's knees or to bend the spine and change the posture so that one bends, one's in a state of poverty indeed if one hasn't found something that's that valuable.